All right. So today I'm gonna basically show you how, and honestly, everyone should be doing this, how to use AI locally. Now, there's a couple of factors involved, and for some, it can be straightforward. Like, there's a very simple way to do it. With extra features, though, it may be useful to use certain applications. But the one thing that we're gonna essentially want for any of our top AIs is going to be Ollama. So, what is Ollama? Well, it's basically a server that hosts a AI in the background, similar to web servers that host web pages. However, in this case, it's a specific type of server, a program that just lets you run a artificial intelligence on your computer. I would say minimally, there are some requirements involved. You can play around with certain kind of configurations, but the general aspect is if you have about a NVIDIA 2000 plus, you should be clear to use any of the top AI models. So the first thing we'll basically need to do is just download this application. You can download it for Mac, Linux, and Windows simply through. If you've downloaded any application in the past, this will be very straightforward. We save the file, wait for the download to complete, and then we run the installation. The installation, nothing too crazy. It's a next, 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 next button. Just keep pressing the next button until you get to install, and then you install it. So technically, I've already have it on my computer. I would not need to install it again. And installations are so simple nowadays that it gets anyone to install them without even having to think twice. In fact, sometimes you may install, not in this one, but in some applications that are free, you may accidentally install antiviruses or third-party software that's included in the bundle. Luckily, Ollama doesn't do this. So after the installation, the next step is, this is the one I actually want to show you. The way you run it is, well, first you got to make sure it's running. You're going to look for that little Ollama head down here in your task manager here. There it is. And it's a little white Ollama. That means that it's running, but clicking on it doesn't really do much other than look at some logs or quit the application. The whole server runs from a command prompt. So a couple of things you can do. You can open up a command prompt through your Windows menu by typing in command prompt. This is your typical internal command application that essentially functions as a text-based interaction with your computer. Luckily, you don't need to know a lot. You don't need to go crazy with commands. We're only using Ollama, so really the only main thing we're going to be using is Ollama. So typing in Ollama and pressing the Enter key gives us some commands. So notice a couple of things. First, we've got a couple of pieces here. These are secondary options for the Ollama application, and we run them one after another. So we type Ollama first, and then the command listed below of the available commands. Serve, create, show, run, yada, yada. When you first install Ollama, you're not going to have any model on your computer. So what we want to do really is first pull a model, meaning download a model. This is where we can go to the Ollama main website, and I've already considered going further into Deepseek. I've got already a couple of them in here, but I normally use Deepseek or Mistral. Mistral is more of the instructional set. Deepseek is actually a huge recommendation. I'll show you a little bit about it. And it's a recent release, which is a very efficient and intelligent model. You can even see it reasoning, and we'll see what things we can do with that model as well. Especially for those in the scholarly world where they wish to learn new things, DeepSeek is perfect. You not only see the reasoning behind the thoughts, but you get a very well conducted explanation to anything from mathematics to programming to history to anything you can possibly think of. So let's say we wanted to install Deepseek. I'm going to click on here, get some details, so we can kind of see some of the information. Well, the first thing we'll notice is this drop-down menu for a couple of versions. For anything less than NVIDIA 2000, so maybe even 1000 series or before. Now, theoretically, this has such a portable model, and this is one of the DeepSeek benefits. It's capable of running on very efficient hardware. The 1.1 gigabyte model is going to be the one you will use on older hardware. But if you do have an NVIDIA 2000, 3000, 4000 series, in fact, 3000 can run the 8B or 14B model. The 14B I have installed, and it does definitely show some slowing in its processing. But forget going into 3270 unless you have dual graphics cards, quad graphics cards, or even servers with the 671. This is, by the way, the RAM. It's not really the RAM, but it's the downloaded model image. And naturally, in order to use that model, this gigabyte, 1.1 gigabyte, 4.7 gigabyte, 4.9, 9.0, they have to be stored in RAM. So that's the case, right? You have to store your models in RAM to run them. So consider this both the size on your disk as well as the size on memory. Now, it's a big difference from something like Mistral. This one has only a 7B 4.1 gigabyte size. The 7B, 8B, 9B, all the Bs are basically just bytes that it can take, or as far as returning information, it's the amount of parsing of information. So basically, the higher, the more accurate, the less error, the more information, and so forth. For most case scenarios, 7B should be pretty standard. But going into installing this, you'll notice that this has a Ollama Run Deepseek R1. This is something I already have on the computer. So what you do want to do on a fresh installation, however, is to pull a model from registry. So instead of the run command, we're going to put Ollama pull. Let's say we're going to do Deepseek R1. Through that process, it's going to basically download and install. Now, I already have it installed, but this is essentially what you're going to see. No, it did not install instantaneously. This is just showing the progress of each installation. Here's your main image and some complementary configuration files. Once they're all at 100%, which could take some time depending on your connection, you're able to then activate your AI model. We're done. That was it. From installing the server to using a couple of commands, the next step is very straightforward. And in fact, it is right here. We can just press the copy button, paste it, or paste. Well, pasting is not a real thing sometimes in certain command prompts, depending on the features. So now we can actually run, or Ollama run Deepseek R1. This is the keyword for that particular model. Now let me show you, I've got a couple of models and I can do Ollama list and here are the current models I have installed. The R1 latest, the 14B, Dolphin Mistral, Lava, my own custom model that I'm playing around with, Mistral, and another Mistral. So essentially, I'm an instructor, I'm a scholar, so I like my type of models that can do clean explanations, informative based. But there are certain models that can work straight as chatbots or other forms. But since you're here, you're part of my crew, and you're passionate about information. The most useful of the models are, in my opinion, Mistral and Deepseek. Some can be also good in other cases. Now from here, we'll go ahead and do Ollama run Deepseek -R1. And it's going to do a little processing over here. And then it goes send a message. That's it. Now we can talk to our model. Now notice this is a very base format. There's no history unless, well, there is a history particularly as you are currently using it. The way you exit the communication with your AI is to do slash by, and that'll go back to the main prompt. However, in the prompt, we can essentially have a full conversation, including its own history management. Uh, and you're free to essentially copy and paste any of the conversations and save them for later. But let's see what DeepSeek, the biggest rage, is actually about. So let's say I want to do let's see, make me a basic web page for uh, basic home page. Let's do basic home page with uh, a slick design with Easter colors. So the first case, because DeepSeek is very detailed AI, it's going to think. You can notice this by, oh, I guess this one doesn't let me scroll up yet. It has a little think right here. So it's thinking, all right, the user wants a basic home page, slick design, testing responsiveness is important. So it actually goes through the process of creating a website. I think I interrupted it. Oh, yes, I did. There it is. And it's gonna go. It's actually coding for me. If you are not mind blown at the functionality, I don't know what to say. We have gone a long way with um, AI. It's absolutely fantastic. So some of the images will essentially not work because those images have to be created and put in the directory or on the web as shown. So in this case, this is an image and there is a placeholder link that you would basically place the image you want to put in that location. Easter eggs. It's actually doing Easter eggs. I just wanted the colors, but let's see what it looks like. We will go ahead and go through, grab the code. You can see where it starts by the HTML uh, with the God, forget the name of that. It's like that slanted quote, single quote. I'm going to Control C, copy that. I will go ahead and create a new page. I'll copy the exact code in here. And then let's see. I'm in an interesting location, so I'm going to go ahead and do a save as code HTML plus. I can make this as a template. So Easter egg template dot HTML, which normally we want to name as index.html, especially if we're running on a server. But hey, this is an example that for anyone learning, essentially can use this to create their own web page. Now, how do we run it? Well, we go to where we saved it. Templates. There it is, Easter egg template. Double click, and it's fancy. It's actually got animations. That's very nice. It does have the Easter colors like I was considering here. And it also has some inconsistencies. Like that's a very dark background to that front side. But in the end, it is quite nice. Let's see what kind of pieces it's using. So it's using navbar, which, okay, and container, which normally is a bootstrap feature. Classes feature icon, Easter egg, classes there. Though I don't see any imports. So it's actually doing this straight from the CSS. So all the styling, colors, and alignment of all the boxes are up here. And yeah, it's pretty well for just a very simple template. Cool. So that's one feature for it. Cool. Maybe you're not a coder, maybe you need help with math. So let's see. How can I solve a quadratic equation through factoring, such as 0 equals 2x to the square plus, let's say, 4x. Whoa, we just kind of swap down here. And 6, 12, 6 to negative 12. Potentially. This may or may not work because this is kind of, the numbers will really be dependent here. So press enter. So here it is. It actually formats the equation much nicer than I was able to format it. That's cool. There's a thinking process again. So quadratic equation, my equation is in standard form, ax b equals to c. Here is a is 2, b is 4, c is negative 12. The goal is to find two numbers that multiply to AC, which would be 2 times negative 12 minus 24. Now, if it was up to me, I'd actually say, hey, all of these are even, so you can take out a 2. So maybe it's not looking for the fastest, most effective way, but heck, it still works out. 24 add up to b, which is 4. So now it's going, oh wait, no, that adds up to 2, not 4. I'm actually thinking. This is the coolest part about this. This is your computer thinking, which is still mind-blowing me as I'm literally reading its thoughts out loud. What about 8 and negative 3? No, that would also, yeah, I don't think I gave it a good number. Wait a second, I must have made a mistake earlier. My first guess didn't add up correctly. Let's try again. Alternatively, there it is. So if it doesn't factor, and because maybe you gave it an equation that doesn't factor, but you thought it does factor. So it's going to try and factor and then say, hey, wait a second, maybe it's not able to be factored. So let's use the quadratic formula. I'm going to skip because it kind of already thought of all the details here. Alternatively, there it is, formula. So there's your quadratic formula. Let's try that instead. So plugging in a2b4c minus 12 plugs into the quadratic. Uh, let's see, b, okay, so the discriminant actually gives you the details. So the discriminant is inside of the square root. Cool. It solves it to 122. That's not a perfect square. Wait, I can simplify. So I gave it a pretty difficult problem. It didn't actually work in any sense of the form for simplicity, at least in the way that the numbers were just pulled out of my ears. So it's basically pretty nice as long as you're capable of and not being intimidated by text, walls of text. This is an actual really cool way to essentially learn anything through the use of AI. This is one of the better methods and better tool sets in our current world. If you are a scholar, this is a godsend. A tool that'll literally talk to you, reply to your questions, and give you a laid out set of details. Oh, it's actually doing it now. Look at that. So I took the 2 out. The factored out 2. So now it's this. Well, that's 2 and 3, so that's not going to get to 2. Nope, doesn't work. I like how it talks. Alternatively, maybe it's not factorable with integers, starting from x, da da da. So it's trying hard. I don't think I gave it a good one, so maybe it doesn't actually. Well, no, it had a 112, so it doesn't have a nice answer. So, conclusion, right? So after it thinks, you can always catch where it stops thinking here. So it concludes basically, since it doesn't factor nicely with integers, we can solve using quadratic formula or completing the square. The amazing thing here is that this thought process, if it's not clear to an individual on how to solve quadratic equations, following the thinking process will also show you how you should consider solving. Because mathematically, this is absolutely correct. You would attempt multiple ways to solve. In fact, if it doesn't factor initially, you always go to quadratic formula if it's not a nice solution. So just the fact that in the thinking process, because again, this is slash think, so this is where it stops quote unquote thinking, in front of our face, which is actually really cool, it concluded that, yeah, it's not going to be a nice factor. So I'm going to use a quadratic formula. And then it gives you that answer. So if you don't want to listen to it think or read about it thinking, then you can essentially just go to the final solution that it's presenting. To solve the quadratic equation by factoring, factor out the greatest common. So it shows you the step. Attempting to factor, look for two numbers to multiply. Conclusion, since the trinomial does not factor nicely, we cannot solve the formula or complete the square to find a solution. Interesting. But it did technically conclude with the quadratic formula. So it should have at least presented the quadratic formula as the final solution. So, all right, maybe it is a little flimsy on the case that, hey, it actually thought about doing the quadratic formula, but it didn't present that as a solution. I would have said maybe, hey, factoring doesn't work, so then straight to quadratic on the 2. And then conclusion, since it did not factor correctly, nicely, so it kind of had that idea, does not factor nicely with the coefficients, then we use the quadratic formula. Instead, use the quadratic formula or complete the square. I guess you can complete the square, but then that kind of gives you extra bits and pieces. Some are not very comfortable with completing the square, but plugging into the quadratic formula would be the best case scenario. Let's do some history. Uh, tell me about Cleopatra. I need to tell you. I like how it's like, I have this task, I have to do it. I need to tell you about Cleopatra. Where do I even start? She's a pretty famous historical figure from ancient Egypt, right? Let me think. Okay, she was the last ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom before Alexandria became a Greek city. That's probably why she got such an important place in history. Wait, so she was known as a great leader? I just love the dialogue it has. Cleopatra was renowned, and she has an actual conclusion. But again, like there's so much information in the thinking process. I really do enjoy it. I've seen some Reddit posts and replies saying, "Oh, I wish it didn't show me the thinking. I wish it just went to the final piece." But like there's a kind of art involved here. An artist sees its his or her work in the process of the final product. Our final product here is this: Cleopatra was a renowned leader from ancient Egypt, famous for her intelligence, beauty, and political skills. She ruled great. But the process was actually more interesting watching it talk about it. In fact, wait, so she was known as a great leader, a renowned woman, beauty, and intelligence? I've heard her name mentioned alongside the historical figures like Napoleon and Elizabeth. But how exactly did she become so famous? I think it started with a political career. No, 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 no. Like, there's an actual process here that's very, very interesting. Now, this process, to kind of finalize this video, is actually called a reasoning process. The AI is reasoning by essentially doing something humans do when they're trying to clear information. They think out loud. This is its version of thinking out loud. Some meaning you're just actually talking to yourself, right? Most cases, some people do it on a productive manner where they're actually debating, talking, concluding. When you hear it through your ear, sometimes it makes more sense or it just makes no sense, right? And then there's other people that talk to themselves that are a little bit cuckoo. But hey, do we know which one's which? Probably not. This is the computer's way of doing this. And this is this reasoning model that's very comparable to a very high-end version that's made by ChatGPT. So let's dive into a little detail here on the comparisons. So there's a test conducted between Grok, Deepseek, this is V3, so it's the previous one, and OpenAI ChatGPT O1. So here's some cases. Aircraft acquisition costs, training costs for the pilot, maintenance costs, Okay, this is a little bit interesting. I mean, is it actually going into the details of each one? I guess this is more of the economic factors of it. So so humor me with a chart. We'll go to my X account. We'll check out a chart that I was showing and check out some of these details. So the blue and white slash diagonal lines is our Deepseek R1. OpenAI, the 5, 6, 7 $100 billion model is the gray one next to it. Now consider that this OpenAI O1 you cannot run on your computer. It is heavy. You will need 100 or 1,000 computers just to be able to run the most optimal model. Similar to DeepSeek, you may need the optimal model. We saw it earlier about the 600 gigabyte or whatever. Yeah, you probably need a couple of computers on it. But for basic usage, most cannot access O1 on a local computer, which is where DeepSeek actually comes in with some very, very interesting data points. You can have a top of the line artificial intelligence on your PC for free that's comparable to a system that costs over $700 billion on your computer for free. Let that sink in. This is absolutely the future. I can go into a lot of detail. In fact, I have a stream that goes through more detail on the differences and processes between, but DeepSeek is a refined version, a distilled version of other AIs. What that means in simple terms is DeepSeek was trained by the other AIs. So it has the best of all the worlds. And it has some optimizations. So the reasoning models currently on the market, the top one is O1. It does the same thing. It essentially speaks to itself in the thinking process before providing an answer. And that optimizes the final answer. Just like when we think about something, we essentially go through these thoughts in a way, maybe not so intricate in detail, but we do go through these thoughts before we conclude an answer. Most case scenarios. Depends on person. Sometimes it's a wonder that they don't happen. But many people will think before they act, put it that way. Same with these reasoning models. This is essentially how you get it. It took 3 steps, a little bit of an intimidating terminal, but there's other applications that you can use. One that's called Chatbox. You'd have to learn how to use the interface, but you're able to download it for free also. Basically, you can use it on the web too. I'd recommend it on the PC. Just disconnect, you know, disconnect from the internet when you're using AI, any AI, OpenAI, um, DeepSeek AI. The difference here is that they're both from different countries. OpenAI is obviously United States and DeepSeek is China. Either way, both of them take your data. So I think your base case here is to run it on your computer away from those online applications, because anything you post, you put images, text, it's going to be saved on a database somewhere. If it's free, in the case of online, if it's a product that you can essentially access online on the cloud, let's put it that way, then there's a very high likelihood that it's not really the product that's free, it's because you are the product and your prompts are training their AI further and potentially being used for a lot of other things. So that's it. I just wanted to give everyone a little peek and conclude on the fact that if you don't have one of these models yet, it's time, man. This is the one. Being able to basically code is a breeze. Um, you can actually go through all of the information you need to learn how to code as well. And then using that, using the templates that it creates for you, so you no more hunting online. You're able to use this AI to create your own custom code and then learn from it, expand on it, and so much more. And if you're learning some math, this is definitely the way to go with that as well. So if you don't have a local model and you're still using online clouds, personally, I don't think that's good. I think the local is just enough to get you really into your own model, personalized to the use that you have, and of course, separated from any sort of data privacy issues. So that's it. Thanks for joining in. Hope this was useful and informative. If it was, or if it wasn't, if you'd like to subscribe or like or dislike, go for it. This is your chance. And if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you. We'll see you. Talk soon again.